All right, so welcome to the CourtBot and sort of justice tech talk that we're doing. The idea has been, as opposed to some of our other events, we wanted to share what we've been working on in a more general to a more general audience and talk at a more technical level than we sometimes do about these things. So my name is Nick Florsch, and I am a leader, one of the leaders of Code for BTV. We are a Code for America brigade. So before anything else, I want to put up the code of conduct that all Code for America brigades follow. In general, this means that first, staying past the slide means you agree to abide by the code of conduct. If you are feeling uncomfortable, let us know. This is supposed to be a fun and open and safe place. We try to be aware of presumptive norms as much as possible, making space for those who might otherwise be excluded from some of these conversations. And we presume the value of everybody's input. If you've got more questions, there's a link at the bottom to the full code of conduct, and you can always report anything privately to me or Irit, who is here, and we can take care of it from there. So, just what is Code for BTV? Code for BTV is a group of volunteers. We are all volunteers, every one of us, and we're trying to come together with working with community-focused organizations in Vermont, in our case, that serve the public good. That may be local government, it may be nonprofits, and we're trying to bring them solutions that provide efficient, effective, and equitable uses of modern technology for service delivery for what they're trying to do in the community. And we do this to try and right the wrong of improper technology use being making social justice issues. It's part of a larger movement called Code for America, and we are effectively a chapter called the Brigade of Code for America. Code for America's values that we strive to raise up in Vermont are the government can work for the people, by the people in the digital age, the services that can be simple, accessible, easy to use, such as the CourtBot. The outcomes can be measurably better, which was hopefully something CourtBot can also lead to. The better can cost less, also something CourtBot can lead to. And we can serve everyone with respect and dignity. So we should all work on it together. Code for BTV is one of many brigades across the U.S. So if you're wondering, like, is this just a local phenomenon, or how big is this? There's quite a number of us working on these things across the United States, and there's even more working internationally under the Code for All banner. Here's our leadership team. And so if you ever wonder who to talk to, if you have questions, these are our members of the leadership team. And I think aside from that, I don't need to give you too much. We are meeting usually every other Tuesday, and one of those Tuesday meetings is an evening sort of work night, and then the other one is more of an information night. So you're welcome to pop into any of our meetups without any sort of big commitment, and you're always welcome to come come to one meeting and share some thoughts and see how you can contribute if you want to. There will be some more information at the end, I think, on how to join us on Slack or on sort of the social media if you want to connect to us in other ways, our website, that stuff. But at this point, I think that we can turn it over to Stephen
Yep,
to
you're
start
correct,
up
Nick. Thank
the
you.
board bot.
All
I
right.
just want to make sure that everyone here is aware that the session is recorded. So if you're
That's
not
true.
to be on video, just turn it off.
Pressure's on. That's what I think. And just confirm, can everyone see my beautiful slide with the little badge that Emma made? Perfect. Cool. Awesome. Thanks everyone for joining us today. So my name is Stephen Cheese and my pronouns are he, him, and I'm the PM on the CourtBot project along with Lucas and Sam as kind of the more programming coding aspect of it. So they handle all the challenging technical things going on. We have some cool things to kind of tell you about our story, why we're doing what we're doing, and kind of the technical challenges we're currently facing and kind of how we're approaching it. And of course, interested if people want to help out in different ways as well, we can talk about that too. So just a little bit of kind of outline what we're doing. I'll talk about the problem that we're focusing on kind of from a broad sense. So kind of what is the problem across America around kind of how CourtBot can fit in, how Vermont's use case is a little bit different than kind of other states. And then Lucas and Sam also kind of dig into our current work of kind of how we're trying to solve this problem as well. And of course, at the end, have anything about any questions you have in that realm. Cool. So the big thing is, we're here to solve a problem. And I think the easiest way to talk about this is painting the story of what's going on. Because it's very easy to get lost kind of in our legal system, and probably most easily if you miss your court summons is a big issue. So let's say, for example, we have someone out you're driving down the road, you're on the highway, and the highway says the speed limit's 65, but you're like, I'm in a rush. You actually don't notice that maybe you're going 85 at that time, and you get pulled over by a police officer, and you actually get a court summons, you have a ticket, and you actually have kind of a criminal court case that you need to go to and go to that summons. And so pretty much usually what happens at that point is you get a small piece of paper telling you to show up at court by this date. And that's kind of the last interaction that you have. And the really big issue here is even if you have good intentions, every intention to show up to that court date, make it on time, and be present, defend, be part of our judicial system. If you miss that court date, no questions out, there's a warrant out for your arrest at that point, and you go directly to jail. So if you get pulled over again, you pretty much automatically are being handcuffed and sent to jail at that point, which sounds like a bad day for some, but it has a long-lasting repercussions that could affect on that individual, especially given their different circumstances they might be in. Because it's more than just a headache of like, oh, now I'm in jail and I have to figure all of this out. There's long-lasting effects of this. For that individual, it could be whether, they're not able to get a job due to having something on their record. They might not be able to have a harder time getting a loan, for example, and just kind of issues like that, or maybe even retain the custody of their child potentially. So long-lasting branching effects that could happen to an individual who just made a simple mistake of missing their court date, which our system isn't really designed right now to really support these individuals getting there on time or in the right place, that we can use technology to help that out. And of course, not even just the impact on the individual, this actually impact kind of the whole broader community, because of course, going to jail is not a cheap thing for society to sustain. You're paying people to watch over the jail, meals for the jail, clothing for the jail, all that, those types of things. So it's not just an impact on the individual, it's an impact on society. And I know the last thing I want to do is have our society spend money on someone who's just trying to get to their court date anyway, and they just happen to miss it. That's not a good use of our resources as a community. And that's kind of the big problem that we're focusing on. So when we look at our little timeline here, we really think about like, what can we do to help people not miss their court date? That's really the big driving factor here of what guardrails, what technical assistance can we provide to make sure that doesn't happen. So we skip that entire part of having a warrant out for your arrest. And I think the other big thing is it's not just necessary for criminal courts. This also is applicable to other courts as well. So if you're in a civil court and maybe you have a dispute with your landlord, if you are having a risk of eviction at some point and you're just trying to not get evicted, if you miss your court date in that situation, you might just be evicted right then of just the accidental mistake of missing your court date in that situation, which is also not good for society as well, just the simple mistake there. And we're definitely not the first people to handle this problem. I know we also already mentioned, I believe, CourtBot Tulsa. I know there's CourtBot Atlanta, Delaware, and Anchorage, and all these things. And the big thing here is this is actually an article from 2017 talking about the Tulsa CourtBot, kind of the impact that they're trying to have. And here's just a quote of just kind of reinforcing that point of, a small piece of paper is the only thing reminding people to show up for their court date. And they miss it and they get arrested and they're put back in jail at that point. And many times it's simply just because they forgot at the end of the day, which is the ultimate worst case scenario of no, everyone's trying to do the right thing, but the system's not working. And with that, I'm actually going to hand it over to Sam at this point to actually talk about Vermont specific use case and how we think about our calendars. Oh, can't hear you, Sam.
Good old unmuting. Okay, everyone can hear me now? All right. As a way of introducing myself, I'm going to talk about some other use cases for this CourtBot service, because that was how I found and got interested in this project. In my previous life, I worked at a newspaper in Alaska, and I covered the court system, and I would spend about half an hour every morning reading the court calendar, trying to find out what cases were important and I should go to. And I always said, wouldn't it be neat if there was a way to put a case number into a system and find out when the next court hearing is. So journalists are potential users of this system, in addition to people who have criminal cases. Another one, when I was working as a reporter, people who are victims of crimes also want to know when is the be the sentencing or the bail hearing or whatever kind of hearing for the person in. If you're a crime victim, you're not officially a party of a case, but you're still very much invested in the outcome. Another big use case for this kind of system is civil cases such as evictions, where again, if you miss a court date, the consequences can be pretty severe. And so Stephen kind of talked generally, nationally, what's involved in missing a court date and how the court system works. But one of the challenges is courts are very decentralized. So here in Vermont, if you lose your little piece of paper that tells you when your court date is coming, your way of looking it up is through the Vermont Judiciary Court System website, which if you needed to check it, you need to know what county, which of Vermont's 14 counties your case is in, and then know which kind of court it's in, civil, criminal, family, and probate, and then navigate to a specific page to look up your case. And it can get even more complicated, both for people in the court systems or for developers, when you consider that there's also national court systems and municipal court systems in other places, tribal court systems, military court systems. So each system, based on where your case is going to have a different system. So if you can, Stephen, if you can go to the next slide. In Vermont, if you successfully navigate to the right county and the right case and the right court type, you're going to see a helpful user interface that looks like this. And on that page, you're going to have to find your name, and then that court number is something that's important that we use, the court uses to keep track of your case, and that we use as well in our CourtBot system. And I see we have at least one actual lawyer on the call, which is handy if people have specific questions on how this works. Stephen, if you want to go to the next slide. So as again, as Stephen mentioned, we aren't the first chapter to look into this court notification issue and this challenge in court systems that we can make better. This is actually a national priority of Code for America to create court system notification services. And the code that we started as a Code for Atlanta Code for Atlanta code, and then Code for Anchorage forked it, and then we forked it and changed it from a JavaScript code to a Python code. And so when we start as a brigade, when we first began this project, we knew we'd have to do our own work for the Vermont specific part because each jurisdiction is different, but with the knowledge that beyond the court part, the notification part, the part of someone requesting information about their case, that can be done at a national level. So we knew that our friends at Code for Tulsa in Tulsa, Oklahoma have, actually they have a live site right now. You can go to court.bot and get notifications for cases in Oklahoma. And they have this good notification system that involves Twilio text notifications and Amazon's Lexbot as an interface. So we decided it would make sense to team up with them. And to talk us through how our side of the app works, here is Lucas.
All righty, so the first piece to our side of the puzzle is facilitating easy access to these Vermont court calendars. So Sam kind of described a little bit about how it might be tricky to get in there. It's difficult to find, the needle in the Vermont court calendar haystack, and one solution to that is to build a database. So this diagram that I've drawn up here on the right, you've got this little green smiley person, and you could imagine that's a human, and they might go to the Vermont court calendars to get some information, and it takes a long time to get it back out. You could also imagine that that green smiley face is an app or a piece of software, and just as it's tricky for a person to go in there and get some information, it's pretty tricky for software to do the same thing in the current state of Vermont's court calendars. It's not fast, and when people use software, they want it to be fast. So our workflow, as I've described it, involves scraping all of the data from the Vermont court calendar website, structuring it in something that makes sense to us and makes sense to software, and then pushing it into our Code for Burlington database, which is the first step. So Stephen, take us to the next slide, please. So how exactly are we doing this scraping? We've got some Python code in a GitHub repo, which people are welcome to check out. But the basic idea is it's HTML scraping and parsing. And HTML happens to be organized in this document object model, or DOM structure, which, as you can see on the right, is sort of a tree kind of thing where there's some nested structures, and they're all tagged in a certain way. And so that helps a little bit. It makes it a little bit easier to go in there and grab out specific pieces. But actually, this is a very common problem, and Beautiful Soup is a Python package that makes this very, very easy. This traversing through this DOM to grab out specific parts. So what we first do, step one, is we collect a bunch of different URLs for the various Vermont court calendars. So there's several courts within each county, for example, Chittenden Criminal Court, and we need a link to that page. And so Vermont Judiciary has a landing page, and we use Beautiful Soup to grab out all of the href tags, which is how links happen to be tagged commonly in HTML. And once we've got all those links, we can go through each of them, and we can parse out the relevant details about the court events using something called regular expression, which I'll get into in the following slides. So this is that step one that I was talking about, where we need to collect URLs. On the top half of this image, you've got the Vermont Judiciary Court Calendar landing page, and you can see under Chittenden, there's a number of links. And so we want those links. We need to access all of those individual calendars and all of the calendars that are linked in this page. And so one neat tool for getting into this, sort of trying to understand how a specific web page might be structured and what its DOM looks like. You can use, I think there's something like this in just about every browser, but I use Google Chrome. There's a developer console. You can access that pretty easily in the top of the toolbar. Go to View, Developer, and then there's Developer Console. And so I know it's hard to see, but you can once you've opened this console, you can click around the web page that you're actually looking at, and the console will show you the tags and where you are in the DOM. So it's really, really helpful to you know, when you're just coming to a scraping problem from scratch, you know, just to associate yourself with how the page is set up. So what I've got highlighted in this image is an href tag. So this tells us we want to access href tags to get links from this page. So you can go to the next step, Stephen. All right, so this imagines that we've followed one of those links and we're now at a court calendar. And again, I've got this developer console open, and you can see at the very top of the developer console, maybe if you squint, there's a tag called pre. So Beautiful Soup lets us walk through these tags and pull them out. But unfortunately, there's no more structure in the DOM for Vermont. I think in a perfect world, or a better organized court calendar, you would have each specific field, date, time, address, you know, who's involved. You would have those things tagged, so you could pull them out in a much easier fashion using something like Beautiful Soup, just walking through the document object model. But as you can see here, we're sort of left on our own at this point. And that's where we leave Beautiful Soup behind, and we start to use regular expression to parse this out. So this is all kind of crazy to look at off the bat, but regular expression, the way I think about it is it's kind of a language. It's really a sequence of characters that specifies a search pattern. So you've got a big blob of text, and you know that you want to get out a couple of words or a date. And so regular expression, or regex as it's commonly referred to, is a great tool for that. And this website, regex101.com, is one of my good friends. It will be your best friend if you're working with regex. It makes it very easy to sort of try things out. And I've got a little toy example up here in the test string window. It's a string that has a date in it. You can imagine that could be on your court calendar website, and you don't care about whatever comes at the beginning. You just want the date. And so in the top, I've got a regular expression, which looks kind of crazy, but once you, and there's certainly a learning curve, but once you get the hang of it, it makes a lot of sense. I'm saying that I want to pull out 4 digits, followed by a dash, followed by 2 digits, followed by a dash, followed by another 2 digits. And I can name that search string, I can name it something. So I pull it out and I know I've got a date. And you can imagine we're doing this for all of the fields we want, not just the date. Like I said, the courtroom, the location, you name it. We're using regular expression to pull it out from that giant blob on the court calendar page. You can, yeah, great. So now that we've pulled everything out, we've structured it in a way that makes sense, we push it into a database. And our database, in air quotes, is actually a GitHub repo, which is pretty weird, but it's actually pretty cool. So GitHub is traditionally used for code sharing and version control. So if Irit and I were working on some code together, GitHub would let us, have our own copies and collaborate and not step on each other's toes. But really, it just stores files and tracks changes. So Nick actually had the great idea to use GitHub for a database. It's free, which is great for us. We know how to use it. A lot of, there's a learning curve like anything, but it's not some specific database or language that people need to learn. It's very universal, and you can see it. You can look at your changes, and you can track your changes to all your files. So each of our court events is identified by a case ID or a docket, and each of those events gets its own file, a JSON encoded file, which is really just a fancy way of saying like key value text. I don't know. And it's simple, and each file gets its own URL, so you have fast access to that specific court event information. And what this image shows here is a specific JSON file, and what GitHub will show you is when changes are made, you can see the specific parts of that file that have changed. So this specific file changed the time, the date, and actually the type of hearing changed from a status conference to a bench trial. So the red is what it used to be, and the green is what's new. So that's really nice. We can sort of follow these court event JSON files through their life cycle as we constantly scrape and update them day by day. So sort of neat. It's very cheap, and it works. So good enough for us. So now that we've sort of got our data ducks in a row, we need to help Tulsa's front end text message app work with our data. So this diagram on the right tries to explain that sort of system. Tulsa's got this working text message based app that they've already built, and they want to leverage that to all these different states, or all these different systems, and that's depicted by these green cylinders on the bottom. But each state might have its own database and its own structure. So we need this middle layer to sort of serve as that communication piece. And Tulsa's got a GitHub repo with code there where states can make their own implementations by doing a pull request, which is just like, I want to add my code to your repository, essentially. And the interface, the way I like to think about it is like, Tulsa is defining the what. So what does each state need to provide in terms of functionality for their database, and what kind of information does Tulsa need access to, or the front end texting based app, what does it need access to? And then the states implement the how. So, where does that data live? How am I getting at it? So it allows for pretty flexible implementation from each state. And this is actually something we're really sort of fleshing out as guinea pigs with Tulsa, because when they came at this, they knew Oklahoma, and that had a set of constraints. But now that Vermont and Delaware are in the mix, like, there's some nuances that we're working out and trying to help them to define this interface so that it can fit 50 states. So this last bit, Tulsa's text message front end is really, like I said, it's not something we've been actively working on. It is running now with the Oklahoma data in the back. But basically, you can go to their website and fill out a form like this, or you can send a text message in, and the app will, like a chat bot, like converse with you back and forth. That part's hard, and that's why they've already figured that out, and we don't have to do that anymore. And that interface piece will sort of drive, fields in this form. What kind of fields does Vermont need, and so on. But that's, I think, the final goal is to have this text message app working with Vermont and with Delaware and whoever, but we're working on it. I think that's all I got for now. So,
Any questions?
I had actually wondered earlier about screen readers on the Vermont Courts Online calendars. Like, those are unstructured data, so I'm not even sure if they're accessible. And I don't know if anybody else here knows anything about the accessibility of Vermont's court calendars, but it might be another takeaway from this, is that we're suddenly making data more accessible.
I'd be curious too if anybody's encountered, you know, getting unstructured data, you know, to me would be amazingly wonderful because I don't get that. I mean, you know, some of the systems I'm trying to scrape, they do, for instance, dynamic DOM creation. And so, for instance, in Santa Clara County, when you go to the schedule, I can start my software and then I can get past the captchas and then I'm in the software. But when I'm scraping, for example, it'll show the departments that have scheduled court dates for a date. The date that I can see on the page is not, as far as I can find, anywhere visible in the DOM. I cannot find where it is in the DOM. It's dynamically placed into the DOM somehow at a time where the software doesn't recognize it. So, I mean, you guys probably aren't dealing with that, but you know, you may, as you mentioned, if they replace some of these systems. You know, I don't know if we can get the RFPs to say, don't be hostile, you know, to the web. You know, use web standard elements. You know, I mean, I don't know how we can get them to say that in these RFPs because they don't seem to.
I think it's a good question about just getting them to be not hostile to other people accessing the data. Like, and I don't know, maybe Jake can speak a little bit about it, but they have been replacing the previous system with a new commercial package, and I think that when we were trying to access even the expungement stuff for case records, it was a little tricky. So I think it speaks to sort of why Code for America had been making a case even a few years ago of just trying to get developers in the room at some of the earliest the earliest point where they're making decisions about this stuff so that they can have an informed decision about, you know, oh, maybe this, should we use this commercial software package? And like the developers could be like, that's a terrible choice. Eric, have you gotten to the point of implementing the sort of the glue layer for Delaware?
Not yet. It's just been looking at a lot of the different things for how to go from our parser over to the actual texting itself, going through like the opt-in process and whatnot. That is supposed to really be that Python library project that Tulsa has custody of, and that is basically the link there is kind of sort of a I want to say pseudocode, but it's actually Python, but just sort of a idea I threw together that structure that shows a structure that could be easily adoptable as more states come online with it, instead of trying to do some of the more complicated things I've been seeing thrown around.
Does part of what you're talking about involve REST interfaces?
Not specifically. This is actually, there's a Python backend for the front end that they're working on, doing the design work and layout of. That this would probably help make it easy to for new states to come on board with using simple callbacks and decorators, and instead of say building out the entire thing for it.
So Sean, you have your hand raised. Did you have a question or comment?
Yeah, to this network of amazing minds that have already, as Anne mentioned, we have 159 counties, and they all are using their own website and such. And so like, I wanted to know for states that have multiple counties, like how have you all approached it? And especially in a sustainable way. So I just wanted to like hear from folks that have that issue of like different county, different website, different approach.
Well, for my jail population thing, I've been trying to access, so there are 58 counties in California. I've had to write about, well, for one thing, I can't access about 27 of them at all. Um, or 28, 27. And I've had to write about 15 completely different versions, the logic. Sometimes there's a downloadable PDF, and then I use Tabula to turn the PDF into text so I can get that. Sometimes I can use, often I use Selenium. About 7 counties use one provider for this population data. And so when they use that, I have a standard code that I can use, but many of them have very different ways of doing everything. So, yeah, it's going to be an explosion problem, no matter what we do. And
I'm wondering if it pretty much if you can treat it as if it's each of those counties is a state. With the model of Tulsa, maybe that's a way to look at it.
Thank you, Sean, because my question, I'm also from Atlanta, was related to that. And I was going to ask similar, because there's 3 case management systems that most of the counties use. Is Tyler, Odyssey, and I can't remember the third one. But so my question was, does that mean, can you write 3, 3 and capture most of them, or maybe each county? And I think that, like, even the ones who use Odyssey, they set up their it differently. They can set it up a little bit differently, and so some of them anybody can just log in and see everything about a case, and some counties keep it private, where you can't go online. I mean, it's online for them, but it's not online for the public. And so I was wondering, I guess you'd have to have an agreement with them, like that you could scrape it without seeing everything, but you just scrape the, court date information or something. But I mean, if we have 3 main case management systems, would that help? Or would we still be writing a bunch of code like Ray was talking about?
It probably would help. Tyler, for instance, produces the Socrata system, which is used for publishing election data. And, when counties and cities in California use Socrata, mostly common code can be used to scrape those sites. But there are, they offer switches for showing or not showing things, but that's actually fairly easy to deal with because the overall page structures are similar, right? So you don't have to reinvent the wheel with everyone. You have to tweak the wheel with everyone. So
I think that's a good point, and though that it really, we were talking about CourtBot even back in 2018, and the attorney who was working with Boise, Idaho, code for Boise, had said that maybe in Georgia there's 3 primary, but across the U.S. there's something like maybe just 6 or 7. There's not that many overall across so it really should be the case where we can try and target each of those as much as possible. The question, so in Vermont, the court case information is private. You have to, we have an MOU or something along those lines with, and maybe Jake can speak exactly what that is, but such that we can access it programmatically. And
well, it's sorry to cut you off, but
that's fine.
but yeah, no, it's we're still scraping it at this point, but it's the electronic access to criminal court records in Vermont is protected by statute. So you have to be part of the state or part of some criminal justice organization like legal aid to have access, and then you can log in and and then do the scraping. So that's what we do with Expunge. But then the hope is someday that some API is made available, and the court calendars, even for criminal, family, all of that are, as you can see, don't require an account, but there's no API. So or I mean, not one made available to us, but seems like these guys are doing good work. And then if you get a little pilot project going and you can show them what you're accomplishing, then maybe they can open it up.
We can prove to them they need an API, and then they'll give us one, and then we'll
Yeah.
have not needed to do any of the work.
I wouldn't wait for that.
No.
Are any other legal aids doing this kind of thing too? I mean, I haven't interfaced with my legal aid organization, but I keep thinking I need to, because I keep bumping into things that I think they should be able to help with. You know, this is within their bailiwick. Do you know of do other legal aid societies, if you come to them and ask about these data, MOUs, would they know what we're talking about?
I'm not familiar with the what other states are doing. I mean, I can't say that I've looked that much, but I know that there was, like, in creating the Maryland Expunge program, there's this Harvard affiliated organization that I'm forgetting the name of, but they, I mean, it was like the purpose of the organization is like legal tech, and they were, yeah. So that was like they first created like an Expunge Chrome extension, outside of the Code for America context, but yeah, I don't know about legal aids.
Has anybody else heard that the court in Philadelphia is unusually open in its data? I was at a conference that Stanford held about court technologies, and somebody was pointing out that Philadelphia puts everything out. So like there's a lot of research, academic research, that's been enabled only in Philadelphia because nobody else makes that available. Has anybody worked with Philadelphia? No.
I heard from Michelle at Code for Boston, who was doing she was just doing general access to Pennsylvania data. She said it was all open. So she was kind of like downloading everything to analyze it, I guess. And yeah, I've heard arguments for and against that, but it does seem to be true.
With our project, we're actually partnered with the Community Legal Aid Society. Our project manager is actually a lawyer with them.
That's probably amazingly helpful.
So Anne raised her hand. I think do you want to comment?
Oh, I actually had another question, if I can ask another one. So I'm not a tech person at all. Like, I don't understand half the words you guys are using. But so I work for the Georgia Justice Project, which is a nonprofit legal advocacy organization that is trying to reduce a number of FTAs. I mean, exactly what you said at the beginning is what we're trying to do. So it seemed to me like this CourtBot is user opt-in, like a person has to opt in, right? So is it on the citation? You're talking about a little piece of paper, right? I mean, that's, they get the citation and then, it's up to them to remember it all. So where is that opt-in information given? Is it on the citation, like in the small print, something?
I think that would be awesome, but not yet.
Okay.
Maybe one day. Right now, I think like our goal is like get the word out. I don't know.
Yeah. So how do people even know about it to use it then?
To use court. Oh.
I was just going to say that here in Delaware, we're actually partnering. We're in talks to partner with a group called the Homes Campaign, and what they do is they typically canvass neighborhoods and say to offer various kinds of services to at-risk communities. And we're talking with them about doing a project where we can help them identify which neighborhoods are more at risk for evictions. And when they go out to offer their services, they'll have like a pamphlet or a business card that shows the information about CourtBot. That's kind of sort of the direction that we're looking at going with it presently.
Yeah, in Vermont, we don't have it set up yet to be able to do that. But Vermont Legal Aid, we are certainly working with them closely, and I understand from sort of our rep at Vermont Legal Aid that there's significant interest in solving this problem. So I think that they would be working to promote it as well. And if we can make it clear to the powers that be in the government that this is working, hopefully it should become a lot easier to get it either as here's a business card with the information, like Eric said, or when they are leaving the police station, they're like, so you should sign up for this thing or something like that. It is still opt-in though, and I think I feel like I heard that it sort of needs to be opt-in, at least for the time being, because it at least while we're still exploring it, we don't want it to be something where we make a claim that it's a bulletproof service. Like we want it to be opt-in. We do want it to be bulletproof, but at the beginning, it's got to be something where people know that it's kind of an additional add-on that they should still try to keep their piece of paper for a little while at least.
Isn't it an FCC requirement for texting? That they have to opt in.
I was about to address it. Yeah, it's either FCC or it is carrier based. Like there's a carrier commission that independent of the FCC that makes it so that you must opt in order to receive text messages. They're basically going to start pulling people's licenses to send text messages. They're going to make it very they're going to make it very expensive to send text messages if you don't obtain opt-ins and maintain an opt-in list. That's going into effect this year.
Okay, thought so.
So I have another question. Sorry. So on that, one of those PowerPoint slides that mentioned Twilio. And so when I was calling around to different counties in Georgia that I heard had a texting reminder, they used one of the places used Twilio. And it was like their county clerk, looked at the court calendar. She went in, downloaded it into a spreadsheet, copy and pasted I don't know if it was emails or text, phone numbers, put it in and sent a text. And she's like, it took her 10 minutes. And she thought that was brilliant, which compared to what is happening now, it is brilliant. But I guess I'm curious, like you mentioned Twilio. So how is that different? Is it CourtBot fed into Twilio or what? Because that isn't opt-in. That was like the court using, because I'm like, my dentist sends me text. My haircut place sends me text. Like, why can't the court? Like, that's where it just, me from like a common sense perspective says this shouldn't be that hard. So.
Well, Tulsa is using Twilio as their back end to send these texts.
Okay.
And, the reason your hairdresser can do it is that they have a previous relationship. If you've bought something from them, you've got a receipt, you have a relationship with that vendor. And if you gave them your phone number in some capacity, they have a relationship with you and can do this.
Mm-hmm.
The court doesn't, it itself could do it. And that woman who's doing that, she has access to the phone numbers. That's not on any public docket information. And we don't have a relationship with that person. So we can't, even if we had that phone number, we couldn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
But the court could do it because they have the relationship, but they don't. They could.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Because it seems like if it was put on the citation, though, like every person has to sign the citation saying, yes, I understand this. Yes, I'm showing up in court. So if another line in that fine print said, it's okay to send me a text message to remind me of my court date, they would just sign it, along with everything else. So that would sort of cover that opt-in. Right. And then the courts could, instead of opting in, the courts could just have it and use it.
I don't know if this is true I don't know if this is true in every state, but in order for text to appear on the back of a citation or the front, that's a state legislation.
Oh yeah, totally. No, I get it. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. But in theory, if it was on there, that would cover it, right?
It would be brilliant.
We have about 4 minutes left. Oh no, this is great. I mean, this is an interesting conversation. I just wanted to see if there's any other questions, if anyone else wanted to ask, either gonna put it in the chat. Oh, we just had a, so Josh is asking, could the court send an initial text and ask user to opt in via text response? It will allow state to adopt a more permanent service. Anyone want to answer that?
Well, anything that starts with could the court, dot, 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 that's going to be a problem. I mean, I'm sure everywhere courts, anything you ask them, their default response is, we have so little money, to do whatever, so sorry, I'm speaking so much. I have a problem with shyness, you can tell, but.
Well, maybe a solution could be going to Tyler, or maybe at a Code for America level or something, and saying, hey, there's all these projects that want to happen that the states can't, you're not doing them, or they can't afford to buy from you, that you can start this, whatever this product is. And is there a way that these brigades could work? I don't know, work with your existing systems.
Yeah, I guess
And
what I meant is, once you get this up and running fully, let's say we ran it in Vermont and it's an opt-in service, it can only get so much percentage of adoption, but it's running really solidly. It's a way to then come to the state and be like, we could do the code base and do that lifting for you, and you would get this service, right? So there might be a sell as a later phase.
Yeah, I think so, Josh. I think we're building up to the sell. I think that's right.
Yeah, so I guess definitely something to keep in mind as part of an option. Yeah.
I'll take this offline to the channel too, but it'd be really great if there was a list, again, a database, how many counties, how many states, if it's at all like California stuff, for example, most big counties, the courts do use a package. So they're similar, but for instance, I just checked Shasta County, which is a tiny little county, and looks like somebody did it in his garage. So it's going to be, there's going to be low-hanging fruit. There's going to be a lot of low-hanging fruit, but we don't know where that is, right? So, I mean, we could cover 40% of the nation without that much effort if we knew where these were. And if somebody could explain, why does Georgia have so many counties? I don't know, anyway. Yeah. So, where do we have expungements projects? Where do we have the CourtBot, the notification projects? And where do we have whatever other projects there are, which states, with which municipalities, which counties, etc. This is a database I want to see in my mind. So sorry.
I don't think you're the first person to wonder this, actually. Yeah, because there's a lot of crossover that the different justice projects could be using. I think we're basically at time. So since this is being recorded, I will share this last little outro thing. If you want to learn more, if you are related to Code for America, you probably know where to look in the Code for America ecosystem of services. But if you don't, you can certainly connect with us. And if you're in Vermont, why don't you feel free to jump on one of our meetings, even if you're not in Vermont. You can join the Slack, Twitter, and if you want to know more about this at the national level, go to codeforamerica.org and find out some stuff there. So thank you to everybody for your participation, and we'll be sharing this on YouTube later once I get it processed, so that we can all take the notes away and move forward together.